If you have top grades at school and university, this will open many doors for you in life. You will have it much easier to access top schools. During your academic career, as a top 1% student, you will be rewarded with awards and scholarships. And when you start your professional career, ranking as best in class at school and universities opens the door to many top jobs. Top grades will also lead to great riches in life. Oh wait, that really depends. I'm also aware that for many of you, learning at school and university may feel like this or like this, and that is not how it should be. Welcome to this video in which I will teach you my 12 top strategies on how to become a top 1% student at school and university. My name is Dr. Jack Jörg Leib, and on this channel I share my business and career advice with you. Before serving as an independent management advisor, I worked for 5 years for the world's leading management consulting firm, McKinsey & Company. McKinsey is one of the most popular but also most competitive employers in the world to get in. I recently revealed to you that McKinsey hires only 1% of its applicants. Therefore, for me too, top school and university grades were a prerequisite to get in. And today I will share with you my top 12 pro tips on how to become a top student at school and university. Not to brag, but just so that you believe that I know what I'm talking about, I should offer you my academic credentials. At high school with my final grade, I ranked as the number 2 among 89 students. My majors were chemistry and Latin. My first degree in economics, I finished as number 4 of those 95 students who passed. My second degree in economics, I finished as best in class among 184 students. During my PhD though, I was more or less on my own. Okay, fine. Now you may ask, was Jack maybe one of those rich kids who always got supported a lot and so on? To be honest, no. Owing to the professions of my parents, I grew up in what you would call a rather socially deprived area. Only few of my classmates at primary school made it to high school, and on top of that, while my parents have always been supportive of my efforts and have always granted me the freedom of choice, they would often tell me, "Do not work so hard, why are you so ambitious, who did you get that from?" So I really have been a student like anybody else with no special advantage, but I think I was lucky that for whatever reasons, I chose the right learning strategies from early on. Whatever your goals are in order to help you to become a better student, too, I am going to share with you now my top 12 learning strategies that I have always been using myself too, on this good old chalkboard. If you like what's coming, please like, subscribe and share. My tip number 1 is not about what you should do, but about how you feel, which attitude you ought to have towards learning. I'm convinced that it is most fruitful for you to develop a passion for learning anything new. You want to go with an open heart and with open eyes through life, and you want to be curious to explore new ideas and ways of doing and be eager to learn new abilities. You want to have a drive to acquire new competencies because you know that they will ease your life in the future and help you to gain new perspectives. Develop a general passion for learning and learn to enjoy those aha moments when you have mastered a new skill. Now let me come to certain strategies, actions you should carry out on a regular basis. My second tip may sound basic, but it is super important. Pay attention during the class you are anyway sitting there. What do I mean by that? When you're at school or at university, you are either obliged or supposed to attend and sit in lectures to follow your teachers' or professors' instructions. You wish you could be somewhere else and be the master of your own time, but some law or rule requires you to attend these lessons. And I understand that occasionally you may find these lessons boring, and then it is so tempting to seek some distractions by checking your mobile, talking to your seat neighbor, and sooner than later you have lost track about what your teacher was saying. It is even more difficult to withstand distraction when you are supposed to attend so many lectures online these days. I tell you, when you are supposed to attend the class, follow and concentrate on the class. You are sitting there, so there's no better use of your time anyway. If you do not listen properly, you really waste your time in the class, and you will then have to figure out later on your own what you should have learned in the class. Tip number 3. Here's another rule that I strongly recommend you to follow rigorously in order to become a top student. Do your homework and do it fast. Again, homework can be annoying, especially when it is piling up all at the same time on your desk. But repeating what you learned in your lessons helps. Already when I was a pupil, I figured that there were different strategies towards doing your homework. Strategy 1, when given a homework, some classmates just try to memorize the tasks in their minds and would forget to do them most frequently. Better, strategy 2, the majority of fellow classmates would use a little organizer or calendar. Whenever they were given a homework, they would take a note by when the task would need to be done at the latest. For instance, if today is Thursday and you get a new maths homework and the next maths lesson was on Monday, they would then max out the available time and do their homework on Sunday evening, but then often think all the weekend that they still needed to do that piece of homework. My strategy 3 is what I recommend you to adopt. Whenever you are given a new piece of homework, do it immediately, the same day you got it. When I came home as a pupil from school, I would immediately do all the homework I was given on that same day of school. This comes with a number of benefits. You will very rarely forget homework or run out of time to do it. Your mind is still fresh about the matters you just learned this morning and are now to repeat on your own at home. And the best is, once you are done, your mind can clear up and you can feel free to enjoy your leisure time. Now, this tip number 4 is so important. Always clear up things you do not understand relentlessly and immediately to avoid losing track. One of the greatest dangers in school and university is to lose track on the matters taught. This is especially true for subjects such as maths or languages, where over time matters become more complicated and new concepts build on concepts previously taught. For instance, in maths, if you do not properly understand fractional arithmetics, you will later struggle with percentage calculation. If in a language you do not understand the basic grammar, you will be lost on the advanced grammar too. It also is one of the worst feelings when you realize that you start getting behind. You get confused and feel helpless, sometimes may start to panic or feel you are just too stupid to understand maths. That is so plain wrong. I've taught many students who felt they are not smart enough to understand maths, and I always and again found that we just need to fix some basics so that they could come back on track. Maths is not so much about intelligence, but about having the right learning strategies in place. So how do you make sure you never lose track? What if you do not understand something that you know you should understand? Frankly, that is one of the most mortifying feelings for me personally. I tell you the following 2 tips. My tip number 5 is simple but important. Always ask a question when there is something you do not understand. That means if you sit in class and you lost track of something your teacher or professor taught you, raise your finger in class or your virtual hand in that Zoom call and ask them to repeat, explain, elaborate. Now you get a second chance to understand what's going on. And there's some side benefits. Your teacher will notice you for your enthusiasm to learn, which will over time improve your oral grade too. Furthermore, you can be sure that if you just did not understand something, many of your classmates have not understood either. So they will be thankful that somebody raises their hand to ask the very same question they have on their minds too. This is a habit though that you should develop rather sooner than later, especially if you have a tendency to be shy. It is much easier to raise your finger in school with 20 classmates rather than at university with 500 fellow students. However, essentially there's no difference. If you ask a question for clarification in a large lecture hall, there will be just more people grateful for you to open your mouth. Now, it may be possible that you feel intimidated to ask a question in public or that you have asked it but still feel somewhat confused. In this case, simply approach your teacher or professor and ask again. You can either do so immediately after class when your mind is still fresh and when teachers are happy to stick around for a while. Alternatively, make use of office hours and ask your teacher to clarify. In my experience, they are always happy to talk to students eager to learn and understand. Oh, somebody smelled something on the chalkboard. Let me wipe it off and share with you my top tip number 7. Ideally, you want to understand everything. I understand though that sometimes you may want to prioritize, and when a new topic is taught, it is not always easy to discern if it is important in the long term or not. However, over time you will find out if a skill that is lacking is important. I observed that at school many of my classmates struggled with language grammar. However, the more languages you learn, the more helpful a good understanding of grammar is, because they are concepts that most languages have in common. Therefore, identify and understand those basics once and for all, and it will be a lifesaver for any other languages you want to learn in the future. Following my next tip, number 8, is important if you really want to come close to that 1% top student mark. More often in the past, at the beginning of a class, your teacher or professor will share a handout with you, covering all matters taught in the next academic year or so. Alternatively, you may rely on your class book and think everything is covered there anyway. I urge you, do not rely on the scripts written by others. Always write your own script. Whenever I attended classes, I've been an extremely fast writer. Especially at university, I've always tried to cover almost every word, sentence or thought a professor mentioned. I noticed that I always wrote down much more than most of my classmates, and I concluded that this often was to my advantage when preparing for an exam. I rarely had missed anything taught in class, and if you require yourself to write everything down, you are forced to actually understand what you are writing down. Of course, you can also add many notes to the main script handed out by your teacher. Just make sure you capture everything that is being said, even if your teacher is seemingly going off track. Closely related to the previous tip, make sure you find out what is important to your teacher. Because often your teacher or professor gives clues on what matters most to her or him, and this is what you will often find in your exam. So make it a habit, especially shortly ahead of an exam, to pay close attention to any clues on the task you are most likely to be given. Very often your teacher will also tell you what is not important, which is great because then you can prioritize the remaining topics in your preparatory work. Tip number 10 is a classic but still important and valid. Especially if you feel ahead of others in your class and if others notice that, offer your help. Explain what you have already understood, answer the questions of your classmates. The more often you explain something, the more often you repeat your internal thought process too. And as a nice side effect, you realize for yourself that you have thoroughly understood something, boosting your self-confidence. My tip number 11 is more of an add-on. Enjoy your leisure time the way you want, but it helps if you do not only kill your time, but spend it on something that will further help your mind to develop the habits of learning and logical thinking. When I was a teenager, one of my greatest hobbies was mastering how to play chess. I would read chess books at home and follow through the matches played by grandmasters. Gosh, I was such a geek during that time, really looking a bit like this guy over here. To this day though, I love diving into complex strategy games. There are other hobbies that help your brain to further develop its learning capabilities. Maybe learn a new exotic language. I started learning Chinese when I was doing my PhD. There was a time in my life where I could understand all this. Or learn to play a new musical instrument. Do whatever pleases you and makes proper use of your brain. I want to close this video with my tip number 12, which again relates more to an attitude rather than an action. Be ambitious in what you do. Strive for the best, not because of a sense of competition, but just because you are curious how far your mind may bring you in your life. If you challenge yourself to grow and learn every day, how far may this get you in life? Trust me, it will get you very far. Be ambitious in what you do and be curious about where your mind and efforts will take you. You may have noticed that I have rarely talked about exams in this video. This is because if you follow all these strategies before an exam, you will just simply repeat what you have already learned and mastered weeks ago. If you follow these strategies, you will excel at exams automatically. Now I would love to read your comments on this video. Did you have any aha moments? Which tip do you find the most important one? Where may you still struggle? What do you think should you do differently to become a better student? And do you have any additional tips that you'd like to share with the community? Talk again soon on this channel. This is Jack.